Hello everyone, you're watching Global Leaders Network, WINTV. I'm Yoon. There are many leaders globally in areas such as government, non-for-profit organization, business, education, our industry, and etc. Global Leaders Network invites variety types of leaders and shares their inspirational stories. Today, I invited Villivalam, Senator Villivalam, right?
Yes, you got it.
Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be here. My name is Villivalam. As you mentioned, I'm the state senator for the 8th District, which encompasses about 217,000 people, about 21 neighborhoods in the city of Chicago, and then about 6 suburbs in Cook County: Lincolnwood, Skokie, Niles, Morton Grove, Glenview, and unincorporated Des Plaines. Very proud to represent that area, very diverse community. I was born and raised in the city of Chicago. My parents actually came here from India in the 1970s. My dad was an engineer in India. My mom was a teacher. They couldn't get those jobs like many immigrants when they first came here, so they had to go back to school and work. And they eventually, they were a cashier and dishwasher at first, but they were able to prosper and finish with 25 years of careers in public service. And I'm excited to be here because it's an opportunity for me to talk about, how someone from a working class family can get into public service.
What was your dream when you were young?
That's a good question. I initially, I think I wanted to follow a lot of what people in our community did. We, became doctors and engineers and IT professionals, and eventually, I think I wanted to go into law. And what sparked it all for me to go into the career path that I chose was I actually did a program in high school. It's kind of crazy to think about going back to high school, but called the Junior Statesman of America program. And I got involved where we did a couple classes, and then we did nightly debates on different topics. And as I experienced that program, I then went to George Washington University in Washington, D.C., majored in political science. And I finally just said, I think our community, the Asian American community, the Indian American community, has a lot of success in the medical field, the IT field, the engineering field, the small business, legal. And I wanted to make sure we had a chance to have a seat at the table in the political process, the legislative process, that impacts all of those other fields and issues. And so, yeah, I wish I could tell you that I dreamt of being an astronaut. I didn't. I really thought I was going to be, one of those other professions, and then one thing led to another after high school.
What is the core value of Democratic Party, and also what is your vision on it?
That's a great question. When you ask that question, I look back at what my parents experienced. When they first came to this country, they were looking for a better opportunity. They were staying at someone's house because they couldn't afford housing on their own for the first 6 months. They worked for $2.30 an hour. They relied on some government assistance, government programs. And that's ultimately what they were looking for, was ultimately a hand up and a push forward, not a handout. And I think that's a common misconception sometimes people make. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today, because I strongly believe, and I'm a Democrat, I strongly believe that our Democratic Party principles is giving people a hand up and a push forward to get from the working class to the middle class, and the middle class to upwards. And that all starts with accessibility to resources, equitable distribution of those resources, and making sure things are affordable, like healthcare, education, making sure that we're investing in our public safety to reduce gun violence. I believe that the Democratic Party is a big tent, and we want to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity, or equitable opportunity to succeed.
What was the most difficult decision you made as a leader?
Another good question. You know, I kind of reference my district. I have 217,000 people in my district, very, very different backgrounds. I have about 58% white, 25% Asian American, 13% Hispanic, and 5% African American. I have poor, middle class, wealthy in my district, et cetera. So I say that to say, I can't make all 217,000 people happy with every single decision I make. All I can ask for, though, is the opportunity to represent them and explain my positions. And one example I'll give you is we recently voted on a capital plan to make sure that we're investing in our transportation and infrastructure. And as it stands right now, the American Society of Civil Engineers has given Illinois a D rating in our infrastructure and transportation system. What does that mean? That means we have 2,300 deficient bridges. That means our roads are crumbling. That means we don't have effective mass transit, getting people from point A to point B to go to work or drop their kids off at school or whatever the case may be. And that's having a real impact on keeping people in the state of Illinois, keeping businesses here, but most importantly, making sure we're keeping our public safe. You know, I don't want someone to drive over a bridge and it be at risk of collapsing. And that's my responsibility as an elected official. The challenging part, the difficult part, is in order to make those investments, which we just passed legislation to make a $40 billion plus investment, we had to look for revenue to do that. And so we voted to increase the gas tax, and that's something that hasn't changed since 1990. But obviously, when you do that, people have issues with that, right? They don't necessarily want their taxes increased. But I'm responsible for the public safety of my constituents, and I felt like we had to do that. And I'm going to go out there and knock on doors and talk to folks and explain why we had to do that.
What is the biggest challenge facing Democratic Party today?
I think part of it is we're a big tent, so we have people that are pro-business and pro-increasing the minimum wage. We have people that are pro-union and pro-women's reproductive health care, want to reduce gun violence. There's a myriad of issues that I think people kind of identify as under a democratic principle. So when you have a big tent, sometimes it's hard to focus on one specific issue or principle or platform. I think ultimately, though, that's a good thing because that means that we're working on a number of issues at any one moment. I also think we're living in a very interesting time, especially people in the state of Illinois. At the federal level, we have an administration that is trying to rip families apart, immigrant families apart. We have an administration that has appointed judges that have a very conservative leaning and want to reverse and take us back on certain issues with regards to women's reproductive health care and others. They continue their attacks on the Affordable Health Care Act. So there's a lot going on at the federal level that stands against our democratic principles. So we have to play defense. But at the same time, in the state of Illinois, for example, we have a Democratic governor, we have a Democratic legislature. So we need to use this opportunity to play offense as well. And I think that balancing act is challenging, but I think it's something that we have to address and we have to move forward on. A perfect example of what I'm talking about is, again, we see all these attacks on immigrants coming from Washington, D.C., coming from the Trump administration specifically. I introduced legislation, Senate Bill 1429, that would make it so that immigrants can come forward and go to a civil procedure, whether they're being have a workers' compensation issue or being harassed. They can come forward. They can go to court. They can seek justice without their immigration status being brought up. A lot of immigrants don't feel comfortable coming forward because they're worried about what might happen to them, their family. And so Illinois passed that legislation, my legislation. We would be the third state to do it, behind Washington and California. And again, that's just one piece of legislation that I think can help immigrants and kind of against the attacks that are coming from the Trump administration.
Tell us about your perspective on the sports gambling and also legalizing recreational marijuana and also abortion and LGBTQ history class.
Yeah. So the first two, I'll also add the capital bill because we talked about it a little bit already, but gaming expansion, where we authorized the 6 more casinos in Chicago, Waukegan, Danville, Rockford, the south suburbs, and Walker's Bluff. We expanded video gaming to have 6 terminals in addition to, instead of just 5, and sports betting as well. Cannabis created a new industry in the state of Illinois. Illinois is the 11th state to legalize cannabis. So this is clearly more than 20% of the country has voted to legalize cannabis. The 10 other states have done it by referendum, so it's clear that there's public support. We were the 11th state to move forward on this. I think it's an important statistic to note. But I mentioned those 3 together, legalizing cannabis, gaming expansion, and the capital bill, because with those bills together, we've created over 100,000 jobs in the state of Illinois. And is each piece of legislation perfect? No. There is not perfect legislation ever. And we have to work on some of the issues with regards to cannabis. We've done a phenomenal job with making sure people that had possession previously are no longer caught in the criminal justice system. But we've also made it so that we're creating a new industry in the state of Illinois. That could not be more pro-business. Gaming expansion, we included funding to address addiction and making sure that minority participation, whether you're Asian American, Latino, African American, you have a good opportunity to be involved in the industry and so forth. So when I talk about those 3 bills, I view that as it's creating jobs and boosting our economy. And I think it was important steps in the right direction. We have work to do on them, but I think it was an important step in the right direction. With regards to women's reproductive health care, that legislation that passed, Senate Bill 25, I was in support of. I was also in support of the legislation to include LGBTQ history in our school curriculum for different reasons, but along the same lines. One is, as a man, I don't believe that I have the ability to tell a woman how to proceed with her own health care. I think that's a very personal decision, a decision that she should make with her doctor and people that she would like to talk to about that. And so, again, with what's happening in Washington, D.C., and the Supreme Court, I felt it was important that Illinois move forward. It's just a personal decision that I feel like everyone needs to make on their own. With regards to LGBTQ history in schools, first and foremost, I believe that we need to be for equality and justice for everyone. The moment that we start picking and choosing, I look at my heritage, the discrimination that we faced, after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, as a brown male in this country, I faced discrimination, and there's an uptick in hate crimes, anti-Semitism, and so I strongly believe that we need to stand against discrimination in any shape or form, and that includes people from the LGBTQ community. And I believe that part of what makes this country great is that we learn about people from every background. And so including curriculum that includes people in the LGBTQ community in our classrooms, in our history books, I think is appropriate.
Some people think that the Democratic Party becoming too liberal without having any moral and ethnic principles. Where do you stand? And also, how can we improve this?
Absolutely. I think each political party can always have room to improve. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, every political party can always be doing more to be inclusive, to being diverse, and to being equitable. I think what a lot of people don't understand about, may not understand about the state legislature is we, number one, agree with Republicans a lot. So it was a surprise to me as well that over 80% of the legislation that we passed in our session, last session, was bipartisan. It was, and a lot of it was unanimous, from Democrats and Republicans in both the House and the Senate. Obviously, the hot button topics, they get more of the attention, and they're more partisan. So I think it's first important to note that Democrats and Republicans work together on the gaming expansion. They work together on the capital bill. They work together on the budget, our operating budget. And so there was a lot of bipartisanship in the state of Illinois in this past session. I think that's the first piece. The second piece, I think, though, is I've seen the Democratic Party improve in terms of diversity and inclusion. As an Asian American, the first Asian American elected to the state Senate, the first Indian American elected to the Illinois General Assembly, I was invited to participate in the process in which we will form to select the delegates for the Democratic National Convention. And so I think there's been improvements, but there's still a long way to go. We need to be reaching out to every community, whether it be Black, Latino, Asian, Native American. We need to understand Assyrian American. We need to understand that each community counts. And each community deserves representation. And I think that goes for all the parties. We all need to do a better job.
How can we make a better society altogether?
I think that's a very tough question to answer because it could be a number of things that we have to do. But I think it goes back to inclusion. There's no question that diversity and inclusion can make things harder because ultimately we're bringing people from different backgrounds that have different views. I may be Indian American, others might be Latino American, African American, Irish American, Polish American. So they all have their experiences and backgrounds from their home countries, from their neighborhoods, their communities. But at the end of the day, we are better together. We're stronger together. And I think that's what we have to aim to do. In order to make our society the best it can be, we have to bring everyone to the table. Whether you agree or disagree, I tell people all the time in my district, you will always have an opportunity to meet with me. Whether we agree on 90% of the issues or not, I will make sure that you have an opportunity to meet with me in my office. My door is open. That's important because even if it's 10% that we agree on, if I don't meet with you, I don't talk to you about that 10%, then I won't necessarily know where you're coming from, why it's important to you. And I think, again, that's what we need to do more than anything, is make sure every community has a seat at the table.
I see. Do you have any comments to our audience today?
I would just say that it's easy to watch the news. Hopefully you're watching this interview. It's easy to watch the local news and some of the other press that's out there. I would also say encourage people to reach out to their legislators, attend town halls. Again, like I said before, it's more fascinating to watch some of the controversial issues, but we worked on a lot of good bipartisan legislation this session, and I would just ask folks to reach out to your legislators, attend town halls, and ask questions so you find out the facts and statistics and kind of get past some of the headlines that exist. Because I'm proud of the work that we've done. There's no question that we have a lot more work to do, and I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for watching Global Leaders Network WINTV. If you want to watch this again, you can actually visit our website and also YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe us. I want to see all of you next week, Thursday, 9 p.m. Until then, have a wonderful week. Bye-bye, everyone.